I kind of like that saying, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I think a lot of it is who you surround yourself with. And so, that's what I love about sports, especially when you play at a high level, you're surrounded by motivated, dedicated, hardworking people. And when you go through those points where, you're just not wanting to do it, or it's, the summer before preseason and you're having to run by yourself at home and follow this workout on a spreadsheet, it's like, go find a couple people to do it with, surround yourself with other people who are working toward similar goals. And it kind of helps you keep you motivated and keep you inspired.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Masters of the Game. And today I get to do something pretty darn special and have a husband and wife combo soccer players that I get to interview today. And I'm so excited about this. It's really interesting how the world works, how you're connected with certain people. And I met Julian, who I'll introduce here in a minute, through kind of mutual connection, mutual friend, and was so excited when he and I started discussing having a coffee about 2 weeks ago. He told me about his wife. I heard about her legendary status in the soccer world here in Colorado, where we all reside. And so I'm so excited to have them on today. Now, I told them they have to listen to me brag on them a little bit, so they're sitting there patiently waiting to join today. But really, really quick, Julian and Kristen Valentin are joining me today. Julian, just to give you a little bit of background on him, he was a 4-year starter in soccer at Wake Forest University. He was on the U.S. men's U20 soccer team. He went on to play professionally for the LA Galaxy. Kristen Kemp Valentin, Kemp is her maiden name, but grew up here in Colorado, where I grew up as well. Won a state championship in high school, went on to then play at Wake Forest University. For those Colorado folks familiar with the soccer scene, Real Colorado is who she played for growing up. I think I drive by them probably 2 or 3 times, the main office per week. So just a very well-known name here in Colorado. And today we get to talk about soccer. We get to talk about mindset. We get to talk about dealing with injuries, about going from one level to the next. Julian and Kristen, thank you for being here. So excited to talk with you today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. This is fun. We get to do it as a family. We're sitting here in the office, and there's probably an 80% chance that there's going to be a kid or a dog here on fall break. Somebody's going to come in this room, so I'm just warning you ahead of time.
That is perfect. Like, this is real life, right? Real life. So I want to start off with a question that I ask quite often on these, but when you look back at your soccer playing days, what's one of the greatest memories that you have from those playing days? And I don't know if Kristen, you want to start, or Julian, you can start too, but what's one of the greatest memories you guys have?
I mean, there's obviously those like big moments, like, you win a state championship in overtime and win a big game in college. And, but I don't know, I've thought about that a lot as our kids are getting older and now they're going through soccer. And what is so fun for us, like watching them play, is like all of the small moments. And I still have so many memories. Like our son is going to leave on a trip tomorrow for 2 games in Utah. And I have so many memories of traveling and going to tournaments with my teammates, and just like off the field, like the time we got to spend together and get to know each other. And just, I don't know, those small moments we had on those tournaments, on those trips, like random Saturday games. I just remember so many things about that. And I'm so excited for our kids to get to experience that too, because that has stuck with me even now. And that's why I wanted so much for them to get to share those moments too.
That's awesome. Well, that's such a huge part of it too, right? And we all look back at sports and sometimes we dismiss the small things. We look for the big things, and it really is the small things you remember later in life, at least. That's huge.
I would double down on the small things. I always remember the Sunday mornings after the Saturday games, the big wins, sitting around with the fellas in the steam room. Like, that's what I remember more than playing in front of 1,000 or so people. So on the college side, for sure, winning the national championship, I remember vividly the celebration in the locker room and then going back to the soccer house afterwards, the bus ride. National championship for me was great. And there's something special at any time you can represent your country and wear red, white, and blue in any sort of capacity. And that is something that I will always remember, being able to do that in under 17 World Cup, under 20 World Cup, and then almost making an Olympic team, but being one of the last left off that roster. So those for me will always stand out.
Well, I love those too, right? And what a fortune to be able to represent the U.S. and it's just a different level, right? You both got the opportunity to represent obviously local clubs, local high schools, a university in Wake Forest where you both played and met, and for you to be able to take that beyond, Julian, I think is an incredible opportunity. One thing that pops in my head just based on your guys' experience, a question is, a lot of times players are trying to figure out, how do I get to that next level? What do you think made you both so good to be able to have that opportunity to go play like at college and go play professionally, things like that? What made you both different than other athletes who didn't get that opportunity, you think?
I also think about this a lot as our kids are going through it now.
Yes.
And I feel like in youth sports, it's kind of this trend toward like, do more, specialize in a sport so young. And like trying to find that perspective of as a parent who's been through it is like, are we doing enough? Are we doing too much? And I think I just remember like when I was playing my best and, getting recruited, which was like sophomore, junior year of high school, I just remember how much I loved playing and like wanting to be there. And I also remember just feeling this level of confidence where soccer brought me so much like self-worth and confidence and, sense of purpose. And I truly loved it. And I think at that point, obviously you need to have some degree of athleticism and good coaching and good teammates and opportunities. But I think so much of it is timing and kind of peaking at the right time. I think especially with these young boys, we put so much pressure on them and they haven't even, fully developed yet. And so it's really hard to predict, when they're 12, what they're going to be doing when they're in high school. And so I think we have to look at, being an athlete as it's a marathon and not a sprint. And all of these, if you burn your kid out and you expect too much of them and you put too much pressure on them, then by the time they get to high school, when it really matters, they're not going to want to do it. And so how do you instill that love for the game and that love for your teammates and respect for your coaches and just trusting the process? Because, at the youth level, especially, we're so lucky to, have our kids play for, a nationally ranked club. Like these coaches know what they're doing.
Yes.
And if you just trust them, my kid should be on this team and not this team. It's like, you know what, just trust the process and recognize that they're going to end up where they're supposed to be and at the level they should be. And if they get to that level and they are still loving the game and feeling good about themselves, then they're going to have a really great chance to play at the next level and be successful.
So I want to press on one thing you said, or a couple of things you said, but Julian, give me your opinion of what do you think led you to have that opportunity?
Yeah, I double down on everything that Kristen says. We don't sit at the house and talk about what's wrong and right with youth sports. We just naturally have that connection. And I think our background and experiences allow us to see things in maybe a bigger picture that other people don't. So that's not an arrogant thing. It's just we are an amalgam of our experiences, and that's just the reality of it. So I know that if my kid's not on the top team, he can grow and develop, and that gives us a little bit of peace, that knowing that there's a long game here. So I love everything she said there. Now, I work in college athletics now, and I know the stats and the metrics say that many athletes who are on the top team at whatever club will not play at the next level. Even fewer play in the professional ranks in any sport. So it really, truly is the elite of the elite that get to play at that level. And I think what the biggest differentiator is somebody who is proactive, they're driven. You really have to be built different to be able to separate yourself when you get to the high levels of collegiate and professional athletics. Just because you're talented is not going to be enough. Everybody's talented. So you have to have something different mentally, something different physically that is truly a separator. So Kristen will tell you I'm psycho. I'm built it's tunnel vision. Whether it's work, I throw myself into something like no other. And you have to be a little bit crazy to play at the next level. And at the highest level, the more refined those skills are, the more crazy you have to be in some ways, honestly.
Interesting. And So there's a couple things you guys said, right? The word fun, like enjoyment, joy, like whatever word you want to put behind it. To your point, Kristen, it's like I see this a lot too, where just like the fun is sucked out of the sport, or can be sucked out of the sport. It doesn't have to be, because it's almost like this shift to business. Like it's got to be a business. Like we got work to do, like all this sort of stuff. And what you're talking about is like, how do you keep the love amidst the work? So I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but how did you successfully, and Julian, you too, like, I guess, I know you agree with that, Kristen, but it's like, how do you keep that alive amidst the work that has to be done to separate yourself from other people?
Yeah, I don't think in that sense, fun was necessarily defined as like showing up to practice and screwing off. Like fun was playing at a high level. Like when the team was successful, it was fun. When I was successful, it was fun. Getting to travel to these, really great tournaments was fun. Getting to play in a national championship was fun. And I think everyone at that level recognized that to be able to experience the fun, it took a whole lot of work. And so when we needed to, double down and focus and work for it, that's what we did. And then the fun part was, the reward that came from that. And then the time we got to spend together, outside of soccer, the friendships that we had, that was fun. So fun it's defined in a different way, because you do have to have that extreme focus and work ethic and, dedication to your goals. But fun can be the experience of getting to play at that level.
Yes.
Yeah. The fun is in the work. The fun is in the grind. The fun is in accomplishing something together with people that you care about. Like my company, Open Doors, now, our purpose as a company, we talk about building something great with people you care about. And that was a huge selling point when I decided to change jobs and come to this company. Is I truly believe in that, because that's how I came up as an athlete. You build something great with people you care about, and that truly guides me every day. And that is a great way that sports bring out the best in everybody through that purpose.
I love that. And let me ask you this, because at least I have these days, I don't know if you guys do too, or moments maybe, where I know what I need to do. I know what I should do, but I don't really feel like doing it. And I don't know if you've ever had that. But if you did, like, how did you, especially when you're at the, high school, collegiate level, even like getting into the professional levels, and we want to build that thing together. We want to like experience that greatness and fun, like ourselves, like individually and as a team. How did you like get yourself revved up to like go do the thing? Because it's hard. Like people are like, I'm going to go do this extra work, and then they don't, and then now we expect some result that's not going to happen because we didn't do the work. But how did you both work through that to like continue to do that?
Yeah, I'll start on this one. I like having people depend on me. I like the accountability of knowing that if I don't do my job, if I don't pull my weight, that other people are going to be affected. That applies itself now in a professional sense. If I don't deliver a certain project on time, or I miss a deadline, that somebody else can't do their job, and then we can't accomplish our revenue goals or whatever the case is. And I think it's the same in sport. If I am not the best that I can be because I cut corners and I didn't put in the work in the off season, or I didn't take care of my body in terms of nutrition, then I not only hurt myself and my ability to be the best that I can be, but I hurt everybody else as well. So nowadays, as I'm just a grown adult trying not to get fat, like if I don't decide that I want to run or work out, that affects my mood and how I can show up for Kristen and for our kids. Our kids then aren't able to see that dad still works hard. And then if I tell them to work out in the backyard, or go and do something to make yourself a better player or whatever, like those are things that if they can see me modeling good behavior, then it makes that conversation that much easier. So, as we talked about, I'm super low key in terms of encouraging them to be passionate and have their own fun. But I want to always be a good model for how they can look at a parent and see a good way that they can be engaging and taking care of themselves to be the best version of who they should be.
Yeah. Love that. Kristen, you have some more thoughts, different thoughts on that?
I kind of like that saying, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I think a lot of it is who you surround yourself with. And so, that's what I love about sports, especially when you play at a high level, you're surrounded by motivated, dedicated, hardworking people. And when you go through those points where, you're just not wanting to do it, or it's, the summer before preseason and you're having to run by yourself at home and follow this workout on a spreadsheet, it's like, go find a couple people to do it with, surround yourself with other people who are working toward similar goals. And it kind of helps you keep you motivated and keep you inspired. Same with even just showing up to practice. If you've got teammates that are just kind of not focused, don't want to be there, it's like, find that group on your team that you've got that solid group of leaders, get them together and get everybody on the same page, but just surround yourself with the right people who keep you inspired and don't bring you down.
Yes. That's so good. Who's one teammate that you both had that was just a great teammate, and what was so unique about that person that makes them stand out in your mind?
Oh gosh, that's hard.
I told you we'd be going down memory lane a bit.
I can drop a name. On the national team side, for me, it was Michael Bradley. Michael Bradley is one of the greatest American players of all time and was one of my best friends, roommate, the whole deal. And when you talk about somebody who's built different, at age 13, he was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to make sure we had a good breakfast before a 10 o'clock game. Then we would go back and nap. He was somebody that I always looked up to, even when we were at the same age. Like I was like, he's going to be special. You just knew he was the mentality that he had. And of course, his dad is one of the best coaches in American soccer history. And, the circle that he was able to grow up in, he was around greatness from the earliest levels of his development. So I just tried to follow him and be around him and just see the way he prepared, take care of his body, the way he invested and engaged each and every day. And he held people accountable. And the other thing about Michael is that his competitiveness was insane. It didn't matter if we were playing a game of horse in the driveway at his house in New Jersey, or some stupid basement game where you have to bounce a ball 4 times and land it in a chair. Those are real stories. We would almost come to blows because it would get so competitive with those stupid games. But that's why Michael Bradley is who he was, and it was as a player, and why he's going to continue to be one of the greatest presences in American soccer history as he gets into coaching and administration. Whatever he wants to do, he is going to have the ability to be elite. And he's somebody that always kept me and everybody else on the team accountable.
That's so good. Well, to your point, Kristen, right? When you talk about Michael Bradley, like what you said, Kristen, like who you surround yourself with, right? And the level of friend that you keep. And Michael sounds like one of those guys where he was willing to put in the work. And it's one of those things, you look at your friend, you're like, well, I better put in the work then too. Because you just feel, I don't know, just motivated by that person, or that guilt or something with it, but it causes you to take action. That's so good.
Yep, absolutely.
Kristen, is there someone that sticks out to you, like great teammate?
I had a lot of great teammates. You obviously remember like the superstars on whatever teams you played on. I feel like I think back, like I just remember girls that I played with both high school and college that went through injuries and were just so resilient, and still like showed up for the team even when they couldn't be on the field. And to me, that was always such an admirable quality, because it's easy to kind of feel isolated and not part of the team. I mean, I remember I had a teammate in college. Her name was Christina Hanley, and she tore her ACL, I think 3 times, and still finished her career. Like, she came back every time. But I vividly remember, she would get hurt and she's like, all right, what's my job now? What's my role? And we had a special relationship because I had gone through an ACL tear as well. But I vividly remember she'd come back from an ACL tear and we were just screwing around at the end of practice, because we did have fun sometimes. And she like did a diving header, just like screwing around, and fractured her collarbone. Like, we're talking like,
jeez.
And we're just like, how can you do?
Unbelievable.
But she just was the most like positive, supportive teammate. She was very talented and like a huge contributor to our team when she was able to play. But just the mentality and the dedication to a team to just keep showing up, no matter what you're dealing with personally, was so memorable to me.
That's such a great answer. She always found a way to contribute, right? She wasn't the superstar, but she was always like if you ask anybody on that team, they would probably say the same type of thing because she had that type of impact.
Yeah.
That's her sneaky great,
Yeah.
great call there.
Yeah.
That's so good. So I have two questions. One, I want to talk about injuries because I think this is super important. Before we go there, like knowing your role on a team is super important. And it's really interesting you saying that because now I'm like flashing back to all these other interviews I've done, right? With his Olympians and NBA stars and soccer stars, all these people, right? And the phrase that keeps coming up is like knowing your role, which leads into like from a leadership perspective, like how am I showing up? And sometimes there's vocal leaders, sometimes there's lead by example, sometimes it's both, like all these sorts of things. How, like, what are both your mentality on like how do I show up as a leader for my team? Like what elements do I need to bring? What behaviors do I need to have for the athletes listening? Like how do I need to show up to like be seen as a leader? Because sometimes we're like, oh, I got to have the C on my chest, right? And the captaincy or the assistant captain, and then I'm a leader. And I firmly don't believe that. I'm like, I've seen captains that are great leaders. I've seen captains who aren't, but we're all leaders. What are your thoughts around that? How you personally showed up and how you would coach people how to show up?
Yeah, leadership is such a fascinating thing. And there's really smart people that have written tons of books about it and studied leadership and all that. I believe that if you wake up every morning thinking about how you're going to be a leader and how you're going to show up, it's missing the mark. I think we can certainly channel our energies and think about certain things of how we refine skills and outlooks. But anybody, in my opinion, whether it's business or sport, who says, my goal this year is to be a captain, I just think that that's going to set you up for an imbalance of a dynamic that you're not looking for. I think be yourself, be true to who you are, and the team dynamics tend to naturally sort themselves out and figure out who needs to be in what role and what seat. And I found in my experiences that's typically the best practice is show up, be yourself, the best version of yourself, be mindful of what the team dynamic is, and then those roles will align in the way they need to. But there's never been a single day that I've woken up saying, my goal today is to, be a director of whatever, or, I'm going to try to be captain my senior year. I've always just tried to do the best that I can for my teammates and show up the right way. And I've always trusted, whether it's coaches or my superiors in a business sense, to put the right person in the right seat. And that's what I try to do now that I'm on that side of things. I try to see the way that people show up every day, the way that they engage, the way that they care about their teammates, and try to do the same now that I'm in that position. Well, people will disagree with that, but that's my stance.
No, and even in your response, though, I agree because it's, I joke with people a lot. Even on the business side, they'll be like, I want to be a CEO. And I'll be like, give me about an hour of your time and $100 and I can make it happen. And they're like, what? Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, we're going to go start an LLC. And that costs like $75 here in Colorado. And then we're going to, with the rest of the money, and we'll call it whatever name you want to name the business, we'll do. And then we're going to go make business cards with the rest. And we'll put CEO on there. I'm like, no, I don't think that's what you want. What do you really want? Right. And same thing with like captains. I want to be a captain. I'm like, okay, that's great. And that's an end result. But to your point, like, what am I working on every day? Like, am I showing up with my best for myself and for the team, right? To help grow like together. And you do that and great things happen. Right. And you push and you read and you grow and work on yourself and within that, but that's what leads to the end result, if you will.
Yeah, you're hitting on a great thing. It's for me and for the way I believe this should go. It's not about the title. It's about the impact. And I think a lot of people are so focused on whether you have an armband in a game or not, or C on your chest, or whether your title is director or VP or whatever that is, that you get so focused on what that means. And you never want to lose sight of what the impact is and what it actually shows up as for your team.
Yeah. Kristen, what do you think about that kind of leadership topic, and what have you seen work, not work within that realm?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as we go through like our journey in sports, whatever age you are, whatever phase you're in, there's always highs and lows. And there's times where you're playing really well and you're starting every game and you're, doing great. And then there's also times where you're struggling, and whether that's an injury or you're just not playing well, or maybe can't figure out like where you fit into a team. I think people, whether you're aware of it or not, kind of look at you and say, well, how is that person responding? And so I think it's, it's not easy to have a good attitude all the time and to always work hard, even when we're frustrated. I think it's just recognizing like you're going to go through phases in sport where it's not great and maybe your team is losing and not doing well. And then you're going to go through these, great periods where you feel on top of the world. But it's that journey and like making sure that you maintain that relatively, same degree of attitude and good attitude and commitment and setting a positive example for people around you. I also think it's like getting to know your teammates on a deeper level and checking in with people. I think leadership is about knowing the people around you and supporting the people around you. And so I think that especially when you notice if somebody else is struggling, that you're checking in with them and it's just making it about everybody else around you and not just yourself. And you can apply that principle to, the professional world too, and your job. It's like, what makes a leader at work? Well, it's not the person running through the clinic yelling at everyone to pump them up like it is on a sports field. It's that person that, people look to because of your experience or the quality of work that you do, or, the way you mentor people, or even just getting, I thought about this when I joined the clinic where I am now. There's 40 of us. And I went from this like tiny clinic of, maybe there was 6 when I left to like, I have like maybe 50, 60 coworkers when you combine like all of our administrative. And I remember walking in there going, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to like find my place here? And you could kind of equate that to like joining a new team or, an Olympic team or a college team, anything that's new or bigger. And I just remember feeling like, how do I even establish myself here or prove myself? And then I kind of thought like, I don't need to do that. I just need to be who I am. I need to be myself. And that generally sorts itself out, because when you show up day in and day out and you do your job and you do it well, people respect that. And there's time, to get to know people. And that happens kind of naturally, but you end up developing these very genuine and organic relationships that aren't forced. And people recognize certain traits about you when you're just yourself. And I think that that's such an important thing to remember, is you don't have to try too hard. Just be who you are.
That's a great point. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people, right? It was hard for me too, coming up, because you're like, I need to appear a certain way. And especially like high school, when you're just, guys their brains don't develop fully till like 25 years old. So we're just goofballs pretty much our whole life.
I'm still struggling. I'm still not there.
Me too. My wife would come in here and say, yeah, he's got work to do. But I think that from an early age, just being proud of who you are, right? Like you're saying, Kristen, and knowing that like, if I want to be serious, go ahead and be serious. If that's you, if you're quirky, be quirky. If you like to make people laugh, make people laugh. But be true to yourself. Like you've both said this, right? But just be true to yourself. And again, spend the time, get to know people, and it's okay to ask questions and be brave in doing that, and give it time, right? And just put in the work, do the stuff that is positioning you and the team to be successful. I love that.
And put it a different way, like some of the best leaders I've ever been around, they're not the best player on the team. They're not the captain. They're not the CEO. They know who they are and they know how they fit in, and they're true to themselves.
Yep. So true. Okay. I love it. Kristen, I want to talk injuries. Julian, okay. I assume you had an injury too, but Kristen, I know you had dealing with injuries. Walk me through a little bit kind of what you dealt with, especially high school to college.
Yeah.
What was that like? And then I want to dive into it a little bit of like, how do you stay like in the right headspace during, like when you're dealing with something like that?
And I think before you go, for context, Kristen is a physical therapist, doctorate of PT.
Yep.
There's a few different, what are these things called? Diplomas in the office here. One of them is mine, and like the other 6 are Kristen's. So it's important to know as we go into this part of the conversation.
You'll catch up at some point, Julian. Some point.
I won't. I never will. That's how you marry up.
It's right.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. My soccer career was not plagued by injury by any means. I just had one big one that was somewhat catastrophic. mostly to my mentality. So we kind of talk about, this podcast and kind of why people listen and what athletes go through now. And I tore my ACL the spring of my senior year of high school. So I'd already signed at Wake Forest. And it was just the absolute worst timing. And I remember just like being so paranoid about it because so many of my teammates had gone through it. And then boom, there I was, same situation. And, times were different then. And especially being a PT, knowing what I know now, it never would have gone down this way. But long story short, I was so committed to trying to play my freshman year at Wake Forest. And so, I had surgery in May. Preseason started in August. So you can do the math on that. I had a meniscus repair, ACL reconstruction, and just busted it all summer trying to do this rehab. And I get to Wake and did all the conditioning with the team. They let me start doing some non-contact stuff. And it was like 4.5 months from this surgery. And they're like, okay, you can train now. And so I started training. And it was exactly 5 months from the date of my surgery. I played in a Division I game against Florida State. They put me in and I played. And then the next game I started and played, I think, the entire game. And then I completely crashed after that. Like it went downhill big time. So I was wearing this brace and my calf was cramping. And I had no idea like what to do or how to play at that level. And it was just way too fast, way too soon. And again, I look back on it now and I'm like, who let my 19-year-old self do that? Because I was like, yeah, I want to play. Sure. Put me in.
Yes.
And some of it is we've learned a lot more about ACLs, especially like at my clinic. I work at, probably the premier sports medicine clinic in definitely all of Colorado, but one of the top in the country. And we see hundreds and hundreds of ACLs. And we don't clear anyone before 9 months. And, physically, are there athletes that could play sooner? Potentially, but the re-injury rate for ACL is 7 times higher before 9 months. And so,
wow.
Yeah. So we know now that it's not worth it. Because of what the data shows us. And so even on paper, if an athlete is ready and they pass all of their testing like I did, it doesn't matter. And what we've learned is one of the biggest pieces of it is the mental side of being an athlete, that nobody is ready mentally to go back to their sport before that time period. And it doesn't mean you're not playing. I mean, you might be doing drills and practices with your team. But you're just mentally, it's even just like the neurocognitive piece of like knowing what's going on around you and your reflexes and your body awareness of where it is in space. There is this whole phase of rehab that my freshman year, I completely skipped. And so then, I'm on this team and I am expected to be, one of the like big time freshmen, a starter, I'm on a big scholarship. And I just remember feeling this like immense, tremendous amount of pressure and having no idea how to function in the capacity that I was supposed to. And I'm on my own. I'm in college. My parents aren't around and I didn't know how to navigate it. And I look back now and I'm like, man, I wish I would have had somebody just slow down this process and say, are you okay? Because I was not okay. And eventually I kind of worked through some of that, but I struggled a lot for a lot of my college career. And I just I had a really hard time kind of capturing that confidence that I used to have and that love for soccer that I used to have. There were still some really good moments, but I think going through injury, you need the right team around you who's kind of helping you to navigate the process of what it takes to come back from whatever injury it is. Yes. Making sure that you go through all of those steps, but that you also have the right support system in place to check in with you, mentally and to make sure that, you're okay, both physically and emotionally, because it's a really tough, hard journey. And I think that's a lot of what inspired me to go into this line of work and in this profession. And, now I see so many young college and high school athletes that are going through this. And, the rehab side of it, it's a long road, especially for an ACL. And so I feel really passionate about how do I help this athlete navigate, all sides of this. And, I'm not a professional in psychology and things like that, but it's having the right team around them and providing them with the resources that they need so that they can do this process the right way, because they don't know what they need until you help them understand that.
Well, and your story is so powerful, right? Because as athletes, we're competitive. We want to get back on the field or court or ice or whatever playing surface you're on, right? And so we want out there. So if you release me, I'm going.
Yeah.
And to your point at the time, sometimes we don't realize what's going on in our heads that might hold us back, right? When we're getting there. I don't know if you've seen this, but let me ask you this, Kristen. It's easy for me to sit here and say, well, Kristen, I know you went through that. Why didn't you speak up and ask for help?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly
and as athletes, we're not taught that. At least from my perspective, it's like, oh, no, I'm tough. No. But what are your thoughts on that? What advice would you give these young athletes who are dealing with that, and Julian too? But because at some point we have to ask, and we've got to take that ownership, right? And you didn't do anything wrong. I hope you don't take it that way. So,
and none of the providers really did anything wrong either. I think it was just a moment. I want to be clear about that too.
I mean, times have changed, right? This was 15. I mean, and my dad is an orthopedic surgeon, so he was like, "Yeah, she's ready." Like, okay, Dad.
Yep.
And we know a lot more than we know now. Yeah. So some of it was just a product of the time and the situation. Yeah. I think we have a lot more resources now than we did then. We know a lot more about mental health and the resources that go into that. I mean, I took Braden to Wake back in November, and I was absolutely blown away by the facilities that have been built and the resources that they have for athletes now. I mean, we didn't have that. Yeah. So it's not a criticism. It's just a story and a journey that I went through. And I think now we talk about this stuff. I mean, you look at Simone Biles and what she went through and what she taught. People criticized her, like, you're at the Olympics. Why are you not competing? Because if she's mentally not okay and she's doing the most dangerous skills, if she could die, yes. But people were still criticizing her. And it's like, you know what? It needs to be talked about that there is this whole other side of sport that is not just physical. And I think that, I don't know that anyone knew to say that to me or to stop the process from at the time. It seemed like the right thing to do. And so it's all perspective now, but we know enough now that we need to be having these conversations and we need to be reaching out to these athletes that are going through this stuff because, they might be afraid to ask for help because could it impact their playing time or their position on a team or whatever. Yep. But it's so important because you don't want to look back on your college career or your club career, whatever it is, high school, and say, well, I wish I would have done something else. We have the resources now, so we need to use them.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me answer that question too. Coming from a guy who is awful at this, whether it's more concussions than I can count, whether it's playing hurt, I never wanted to lose my job. I always, and I think this is what made me successful, I never thought I was good enough. And I was undersized for my position. I was a center back. They typically are big, strong, fast, 6'3", much better looking for whatever that's relevant. I was scrappy. And I've had success in sport and business because I always felt the need to work harder than everybody else. And Kristen's still mad at me now because I work late in the evenings because I think that I'm not good enough. And if my bell got rung and I was afraid that I was going to lose my starting spot, I wasn't going to let a silly concussion keep me out. So, I used to take pride in the fact that I knew how to beat the concussion test. I know the questions that they're going to ask, and I know how to make my eyes look the right way to trick the trainers. And now looking back at that, it was just so dumb. And, when I was a pro, I was on the borderline. I was like, if I played in the second division, I would have been one of the top players on the team. If I was in MLS or major league team, I was on the bottom. So I was always kind of that in-between guy. And I never wanted a little ankle tweak or something that was a little bit uncomfortable to have me lose my job. And I definitely wasn't going to let a head injury do that because nobody can prove that. So I feel the effects of concussions today. I have a headache probably 4 times a week when I have stressful mental exercises at work and in my personal life. And, I would encourage everybody to truly be open and honest about how you're feeling, and just know that if you feel like you're doing it to not lose your job or to keep it, whatever, that providing somebody else another opportunity can be a good thing. They can show up, they can help out, and give them an opportunity to survive and be a part of the setup. But yeah, I was bad at that and continue to be bad at that, and I need to work on that.
Yeah, and we all do, right? It's I think to both your points, right? For the athletes listening, it's a strength to ask for help. I think we're taught it's a weakness, but it's actually a strength. And I'm going to pull off what you both said a little bit earlier, where if our goal is to show up the best we can for ourselves and our team, right? To use some of that wording, then the quicker I talk about like, hey, my ankle is tweaked, the quicker I can get treatment to get back on and be stronger and more impactful than I was before, right? Or if I'm really injured and I have to wait 9 months, there's a reason you're waiting 9 months, because you can come out of the gate way hotter than you could at 5 months, right? Knowing what we know now. And I think that's such an important piece.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes back to like trust the process and trust your coaches and that they know, what they're doing. It's also trust the people around you when you're injured, that they know what's best for you. It's not because, we're not holding you back because we want to punish you. It's we know enough now to know how, what the best outcomes are and why and when. And if you trust that, then you're going to come back stronger. And injuries are a part of sports. Like everybody goes through some degree of an injury. If you're going to play at a high level, it doesn't mean, it's not going to compromise your career in most situations. It's part of the process, and everyone around you knows that. And so if you do the work the way that you're supposed to, and you trust, the people around you who are helping you to navigate it, then you're going to come back and you're going to be fine.
Let me give another quick story here. My senior year in college, the year we won a national championship, I broke my ribs early in the season. Our keeper came out in practice, kneed me in the rib cage, punctured a lung. It was one of the most painful injuries I ever had. I physically could not move. So there was no way I could cover this one up. So I missed 6 games. And in that time, a player named Ike Opara, who was a freshman out of Durham, nobody knew Ike Opara. He wasn't expected to be any good, quite frankly, as an unknown recruit, ended up filling in for me. So Ike played next to a guy named Pat Phelan, who's one of my best friends. Pat was a big-time recruit. He was a senior. So by me getting hurt, it created an opportunity for Ike Opara to get on the field. Fast forward 12 years, Ike Opara is one of the best American defenders in history, 3-time MLS Defender of the Year, etc. But that freshman year, he was so good because I got hurt that we couldn't keep him off the field. So after my 6 games that I missed with my ribs, we ended up taking Pat Phelan, who was the established senior who I used to play next to as center backs. Pat played in the midfield, and then Ike and I played next to each other. So because I got hurt and physically couldn't play, it allowed Ike to get on the field. And then a coach's job was to put the best 11 on. So then we moved Pat to a different position. Ike was able to play. So now the 3 of us were able to play together. And that was a key part of how we were able to win a national championship. So without me getting hurt and conceding, if it was a concussion, then I still would have played, and Ike never would have gotten that chance. So the fact that I broke my bones and broke my lungs, it allowed for us to win because somebody else got an opportunity that they wouldn't have otherwise. And the rest is history. Ike had a career that is very storied, 100 times better than my professional career. And I'm glad that it worked out that way. I truly am.
That's amazing. And creativity of a coach to see that and to make the adjustments along the way, I think is a huge skill set of that particular coach was able to go through.
Coach. Absolutely.
All right. Second to last question. And then we'll let you go.
That's penultimate question. That's a good word.
You led me really well into this, Julian. But I'm curious from both your perspectives, who is the best coach that you've ever had, and what was so unique about him or her that makes them stand out in your mind?
There you go.
And you can just, you don't have to use a name if you don't want to.
I don't mind.
Oh, I don't mind. Yeah.
Go for it.
I had two really great coaches at Real. So Jared Spires came over to Real. He's now the CEO. Came over to Real when he was, I think, 23, 24 years old. My team was U13, and he had our team basically until we graduated high school.
Wow.
Which is kind of rare these days. Usually coaches kind of cycle through. And so that may partly be why I think he was so impactful. But I just remember, I mean, he was a great soccer coach, but I think the way he connected with us as players and me personally, like just feeling like he truly knew me as a player, as a person, and, you know, was going to do everything he could to bring out the best in me. And I think he instilled a sense of confidence in me that was so formative, you know, and really I talked about like, why did I love soccer? Because it brought out the best in me and my confidence. And then I was lucky enough to also have Lorne Donaldson, former president of Real. He went on to coach the Jamaican women's national team in the last World Cup. They had their most successful run ever, and is now coaching in NWSL, the Chicago Red Stars. So he was, and what I remember about Lorne especially is that we talk about how do you make something fun? Man, he's an incredible coach, but we had so much fun. Like, he was just hilarious, cracking jokes. Like, he's Jamaican, so he just, you know, just the way he talked to us, like, it was just, I just remember so many one-liners from him, but just, and a lot of his practices were just playing. Like, he wasn't big on like drills and technical stuff. It was like, just play and just let the game be the teacher. And I just, you know, to this day, I still see him, and like, he just gives me a huge hug, and it's just like this infectious smile. Like, that's what I remember. Like, yeah. So I was lucky enough to have some great coaches in my club career that made soccer fun. And, you know, they were really big on instilling a strong sense of team and bonding and all of that. And so that's what I remember best. I mean, I've had great coaches at every level, but that was so instrumental in my career and building my love for soccer, for sure.
That's so good. That's so good. Thanks for sharing that with me. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I've had more coaches than I can remember, but now when I look back with perspective, I think about how the great coaches I've had at each phase of my life and what made them great. So going back way in time, Gary Ross, we call him Rossi, back in Lancaster, PA. He was a wizard at identifying young talent and really instilling that love of the game. And he was a great one that kind of started on that. Then when I left home, went to the national team setup, John Hackworth was like a father figure to me. And I learned a lot about compassion and how to really love your players through Hack. And then when I started on the national team circuit, Thomas Rongen is a name that comes to mind as somebody who, from a tactical standpoint and from a fun standpoint, he was able to build a team of people from lots of different backgrounds and club teams and do that really effectively, very quickly. And I loved playing for Thomas Rongen. And then, of course, Jay Vidovich and Bobby Muse in college, the way that they built programs over time and took people from different backgrounds that they recruited, and over the course of 4 or 5 years, put together different groups of teams that kind of build and grow over time. But the name that comes to mind is the coach I probably learned the most from, and you know, from an adult perspective, would be Bruce Arena. So again, another one of those old school classic American soccer coaches, but yep. Bruce was great in how he empowered adults to really take ownership of their own team. And of course, we had great leadership on our team with David Beckham and Landon Donovan, and even somebody locally like Alan Gordon. Gordo was on that team. And again, you talk about somebody who was a phenomenal leader on the team that didn't have an armband or a formal leadership role. Like, Gordo was a great leader in the locker room, and Ante Jazic. So just throwing some of those names out there, but empowering great leaders and empowering a team to kind of police itself. Like, he was a true players coach. And I take a lot of the stuff that I had with the 2 years I was with Bruce Arena into how I manage my teams and show up in my business life as I show up every day today. So, you know, I had a lot of people that I've been able to learn from over time, and, you know, wanted to shout a few of them out.
I love that. Well, I think it's everything you said, right? And there's so many other coaches you guys probably didn't mention, like you said. And, for the coaches listening, right, the impact that you have is pretty darn amazing on the athletes you coach, and keep doing that and keep evolving. And players, you're going to be able to look back just like Kristen and Julian are now, and just like I do. And whether you agree or disagree or like or don't like, there's always stuff you can pick up from coaches, right? In the ways they're trying to impact you, because in 99.9% of cases, coaches care deeply, and they want their players to be successful. And so I think that's huge. Okay. Last question, I promise, and it's not really a question, but if people watching, listening right now want to connect with you both, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, you can hit me up on, it depends. LinkedIn is a good spot for me.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a professional presence that I have. If anybody's looking to connect in a personal sense, we could certainly direct there, but that's a good spot. That's kind of a public facing profile that you can hit me up there.
Love that.
Just my name on LinkedIn.
I don't really use a lot of social media.
You can hit me
okay.
Kristen on my LinkedIn. So you don't
I have a LinkedIn.
You do?
I do.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
I don't have my notifications turned on because you sent me a message and I didn't know.
There you go.
Like, please connect with me, Kristen. Please accept my invite.
No, I keep my social media private, so I don't have public accounts. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way because I think you can access all of that publicly. Maybe I'll turn on my notifications from now on.
Maybe.
So,
Yeah, I do X. I do X and Twitter. That's kind of my go-to social network that's public. So
Yes.
I do create content there. I share insights about what I'm doing professionally and share stories and things like that. My IG is locked up. I'm not a big Facebooker. I work in media and college athletics and coach up athletes on how to be smart with these tools. And that's a part of my background that I've done in the past. So I heed my own advice in crafting my brand, if you will, to be exactly what I want it to be.
Yes.
So LinkedIn is a good public access.
A huge play. It's a huge thing now. We're talking NIL branding, like getting exposure. What a different world than when I grew up, for sure. And you get to live it every day, Julian, right? And what you do, which is pretty darn incredible. So I'll put links, everyone, just to the different in the show notes. If you want to connect with Kristen and Julian, you definitely can. But both of you, thank you so much for doing this.
This was cool. Thanks for the invite. This was really fun to be able to chat about life and sport and mentality. I'm honored to be able to do it alongside Kristen, who inspires me every day and tries to make me a better person than I am.
Love that. Yes, I know. I've got the better half on here, Julian. I know that.
but just from a medical perspective, you can't break your lung; you puncture it.
I think I broke it.
Make sure we're clear.
I'm just saying. That's why you're a doctor, not me.
So good, so good. Well, with that, huge thank you to obviously Kristen and Julian today for being part of the show. For everyone watching, everyone listening, please share this with all your soccer aficionados, all your fans, all your coaches, players, and anybody outside of the game of soccer as well. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next interview.